What's up, Blog Tribe on YouTube? What you're about to watch is a podcast interview I did with the one and only Seth Godin. He is one of my all-time favorite marketers, authors. I love listening to his podcast as well. And we have a lot to talk about on writer's block and overcoming resistance, productivity, that sort of stuff, as well as imposter syndrome for creators and solo entrepreneurs such as yourself. So like I said, this was originally a podcast episode. If you want to listen to the whole thing, it's actually longer than this video. You can go to doyouevenblog.com/podcast and you can find it there. And the only other bit of housekeeping is that you should go to Amazon or wherever you purchase books and grab Seth's latest book, The Practice. I'm like 50-60% of the way through and it's so good. Just came out, go grab that. And without further ado, here is some snippets of my interview with Seth Godin. Imposter syndrome. If I hear anything from my audience, not every single day, but I feel like a good bit, I don't need to start a project on this topic or this industry or this niche. I am not an expert. Look at all these other people already doing this sort of thing. What would you say to those people?
Well, I guess it depends. If you seek to be a heart surgeon or the leader of a government, I would like you to be an expert at the thing.
Yeah.
Right? That winging it is inappropriate. But if you seek to lead, if you seek to connect, if you seek to do human skills, and you feel like an imposter, and you ask someone, how do I get rid of this feeling of being an imposter? My answer may surprise you, which is, well, of course you feel like an imposter because you are one. That what it means to lead is to do something that no one has ever done before quite this way. And so your subconscious is telling you something true, which is you're faking it. All leaders are imposters. We are asserting something that's not true yet. Please listen to my podcast because it's funny. Well, how do you know it's funny? I haven't heard it yet, right? You may think it's funny, but I probably, who knows? And therefore, you are acting as if. And I think that when you start feeling like an imposter, you're on to something because it means you've gone outside of where you were toward me to make things better for me.
If that's like one of the things I hear all the time, another thing I hear almost all the time would be focusing on the raw things. Again, I'm talking about driving traffic to their blog, SEO, affiliate marketing, all these things. I get emails from people and this is what they're focused on. Like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this growing an audience for me? Do you have any advice for those people? Well, what are some practical ways that they can move back into the practice?
I love this question. So I got criticized for years and years about my blog because I don't write listicles. I don't have link bait headlines. I have no comments. I do no SEO whatsoever. I don't swap links with people, and I don't have any sponsors. And then I write one of the most popular blogs in the world and have for decades, and people say, well, that's just because you're Seth Godin. And I wonder, when did I become Seth Godin? Was it when I had 100 readers to my blog? 400 readers to my blog? At what point did my blog succeed because I'm me? And this is all nonsense. You know, that my podcast is in the top 1% of all podcasts. And I don't do any of those things for my podcast either, because that's a game you cannot win. You cannot win because it is based on scarcity and a false understanding of value. That as soon as you say, I need to be on the first page of results for X, you've now said, I will have to be more average than everybody else and fit Google's elusive, mysterious rules about how to win.
Yeah.
So when I ran Squidoo, one of the pages on Squidoo, we had 300,000 pages. One of the pages was on laptop bags. And for more than a year, we were the #1 match for laptop bags. And I got to tell you, it's great juice. It was thrilling. It was our #1 page by far. And so we spent a lot of time trying to reverse engineer. How is it that this woman built this page about laptop bags? How could we do it for 100 other categories? Because if we could do it for 100 other categories, we would have gone from the 40th biggest website in America to the 10th biggest website in America. And what we discovered is that chasing Google does not work. And that what you want is not to win the search for blog or even the search for podcasting podcast or even, something generic. You want to win the search for you. And it's easy to win the search for you because if Google's doing their job, who else should they put up there for you? Yeah. So now the question is a different question. Why would people search for you? That's the real question. Yeah. And that's the practical advice. To be idiosyncratic, to be peculiar, to be the one and only, irreplaceable version of you. And people who feel like imposters are afraid to do that. And they say, how can I be someone else right now? And someone else is already taken. All that's left is you.
So, all right, let's tie this back around to the practice and Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. Because when I first started reading and I've listened to your podcast long enough, I knew this was somewhat tied to the resistance. So for those who have not listened to the wonderful audiobook or listened to the book, although it's not as good in my opinion, what is the resistance in your opinion?
Okay, so when I wrote Linchpin, I came across this book called The War of Art. And I sat here in my office and loudly exclaimed, why wasn't I informed? How was it that this book had been on the market for years and no one told me about it? And so part of my commitment going forward, in addition to 400 things I try to focus on, is to make sure people know about this book. Okay, so what Pressfield did, Steve's a good friend and a really good writer. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance and many other best-selling books. He got tired of whining from people who were stuck. So he just wrote this missive for them so they would go away. And it ended up being his best-selling book, just as a side hustle. Resistance, he doesn't say the word the, even though I do. Resistance is anything that we feel deep down that causes us to avoid the work we should be doing. It is an understandable outgrowth of evolution. It is writer's block. It is the thing that makes us change our outfit 5 times before we go on a blind date. It is anything that causes us to avoid the muse. Now, Steve and I disagree about what the muse is. I think the muse is just a made-up idea. He thinks there really is one. But it still remains that if you're not doing the creative work you could do, and you know you could because you've done it before, it's because resistance is pushing you not to. And the magic of resistance, like a Nautilus weight training machine, is resistance can be dealt with, it can be danced with, and it can be overcome.
And act as a compass for what you should probably be doing with your time.
Brilliant, Pete. Exactly. The best way to dance with it is when it shows up, you say thank you. Thank you for reminding me that I was headed in the right direction.
I love it. Do you personally, you don't have to, I hate asking people about failures. It just feels a little bit awkward for me.
I don't mind.
Okay. When was the last time, or can you think of a recent time where resistance got you more so than in a while? Is there a specific day, week, project, or anything that kind of comes to mind for you?
Every single day.
Okay.
Every single day. This morning at 5:45 a.m. I know exactly the last time, 5:45 a.m. today, that I am hyper aware of what it's like for me to lean into resistance and get through it, and what it's like to give up. And just like any athlete who can feel when their joints or muscles are doing what they're supposed to, and when they're feeling a little creaky, I can feel it because I've been training around resistance ever since Steve taught me that word 12 years ago, 11 years ago. And so I'm hyper attuned to what it feels like. And I blog every single day. And if a blog post doesn't go quite far enough, it's because resistance pushed me. And I do virtual talks for people who I can't fly to go see. And when I fail to lean into the talk as much as I could, when I fail to be as raw or as productive as I could, it's resistance. There's no physical thing, there's no gravity, no Newtonian mechanics whatsoever keeping us, any of us, from doing extraordinary work, from being Miles Davis. Nothing except resistance.
So you're well-trained now, but I remember Stephen Pressfield in his book talking about the the little gizmos and widgets on his desk that would like remind him to invoke the muse or whatnot. I don't know if you have anything like that. Oh, he's holding up a block. What
This
did that
is
say?
this is a wooden writer's block. I am making them on my Glowforge. They're going to be part of a special package, but they take a very long time to make. 6 sides. One of the sides says attitude is a skill, and each one is different. And one side says there's no such thing as writer's block. And so the pun of it being a writer's block.
I love that. So it's actually a chapter in your new book. There's no such thing as writer's block. What I was eventually asking from your writer's block was how you trained yourself. Maybe you could go back to the early days, or what could people practically do? A sticky note. I'll just go ahead and throw out one since it's my podcast and I asked the question. I have a sticky note that says patience on my desk because that happens to be my downfall for pretty much everything. It's right there. I see it every morning. It's nothing fancy. It's a pen on a sticky note. That for me works. I see it and I take a deep breath and then I have a little bit more patience. But how would you suggest people start to train themselves like athletes, like feeling the resistance to sit down and do the work they need to do? Does that make sense?
It does. I got 100 tactics. I'm not going to give you any of them.
Okay.
Because I think before we get to tactics, we have to treat ourselves like grown-ups and ask a very simple question, which is, do you care enough to put the effort in? If you don't, that's totally cool. There are 100 ways to get by. But if you do, then on any given day, any one of these things is going to work. Any of them. There's nothing special to you. It is simply, there's work to be done. Do you care enough to do it? Because it's not like, I was listening to Chuck Norris talk about how Bruce Lee died. And Bruce Lee died because he had been doing weight training and he ruptured a disc in his spine. And that led to him being on painkillers, which led to him dying. And when you are the size of Bruce Lee, you can't lift as many pounds of weight as he tried to lift. You'll just break, and he did. And his willpower was stronger than his body. But we're not dealing with that situation here. We're just dealing with, do you care enough? Now, caring enough doesn't mean you're going to have the #1 song on Spotify, and it doesn't mean you're going to write the blog post that wins the internet, and on and on and on, because that's the market. And a key part of what I talk about in the practice is none of this guarantees that you will win in the market. We're not up to that yet. We're just up to, is this what you could do? And the answer is, it is if you care enough.
Well, Seth, we only have a few more minutes. Let me ask one more question that I ask almost everybody who comes on this show. It's going to sound a little bit negative, but it never fails to get an interesting answer. What is one thing that you wish other creators, namely bloggers and podcasters, would stop doing or do less of?
So I don't want to address this to all podcasters and all bloggers. I'll just address it to some, which is, please stop hustling. No one wakes up in the morning hoping to be hustled. No one says, I wish somebody would come with some pop-ups and some pop-unders and some close talking and some ways to manipulate me into taking certain actions because it's the thing of the day. Nobody hopes that they'll get an email that's spam that pretends it's not spam, or that someone searching for a connection that they maybe it's premature will come and bother them. Nobody. And so if you've set short-term goals for market acceptance of your work and it's not happening, it's really tempting to make shortcuts to try to make it happen in the market. And every time you do that, you make your work worse. And the alternative is to accept the fact that this might very well be an organized hobby. It might not be the way you can make a living. But if you treat it like a passion and a service, ironically, it might very well turn into the way you can make a living. But if you go at it saying, what can I take instead of what can I give, you're probably going to end up with a lot less.
All right, then. I hope you enjoyed some of that interview with Seth. You can go to doyouevenblog.com/podcast to listen to the whole thing. And I love you guys. Thanks for watching, YouTube blog family. Go check out some of these other videos, and I will see you next time. Oh, and go grab The Practice by Seth Godin. It's so solid. Go buy it.